All right, lads. Hello. Hi, everybody. I gave you a transformation geometry question from 2011. It was a higher level for your last class. And I just want to go through it here with you and teach parts of it to you, as some of you, from what I've seen coming in, are going to need help to do some of this. So it was question 5, just like every year. Question 5 is the transformation geometry question at higher level. This particular one I picked mainly because it was slightly simpler than others, in the sense that there are no curves here in the shape. So it's just a little bit easier to be accurate. So just for that particular reason, I went with it. So it says that the figure shows a logo for dog kennels. The figure is subject to transformations in the following order. So we have axial symmetry first, followed by a central symmetry, followed by a translation. And then in the normal run of things, we would also have a rotation, but I asked you not to do that. I said that that is an element that we need to move up to, because we haven't done a rotation yet within one of these classes or one of these questions, and that's what's going to be the new thing. But rather than jump straight into that this morning or today, I asked you to just do the question up to axial, central, and then translation. We are given points P1, P2, P3, and P4, and down here we're given a framework for those points and a set of measurements from which to mark them in. Some of you find this a little bit tricky, and I suppose the thing that I want to remind you of is, if you were drawing this from scratch as opposed to using the printed one that I gave you, by the way, that's absolutely fine. It's perfect. In fact, I just gave you the printed one to make it a little bit easier on some people. But if you are drawing from scratch, the important thing to note is that those lines are dimension lines, and they are construction lines, and they are necessary within your question in order to mark the points. But the important thing here is the actual P to P1, P1 to P2, P2 to P3, and P3 to P4. That's what's important. And if you look at the question as well, part A asks you to draw the given figure. Whereas in the ordinary level, I'm pretty sure, I must check that to be certain on all cases, but certainly they wouldn't write that. They just tell you go straight ahead and do the transformation. So usually when that's written, that means that there are marks for it and it is valuable. So we're asked part A to draw the given figure. Part B, determine the image of the figure under each of these transformations. Now, before I actually start drawing, I want to just highlight what is slightly different in this. And to be honest, there isn't a hell of a lot. One thing that I want you to be careful of is these can be in any order. Okay, at ordinary level, it tends to be the same order. It tends to be translation, then axial symmetry, then central. So you need to check. So that is important. Check. Okay. And even the way I've highlighted there, the color, if you could tie in your color with your question and so on, that would even be better. All right, so what do we know so far? We know that P is going to move to P1 under an axial symmetry. So the axial symmetry is, and actually I probably should have written it there. Look, we'll mark it in. Axial symmetry is P to P1. That one. The central symmetry is P1 to P2, and that would be that one. And P2 to P3 is our translation, and if we were to do rotation, it would be P3 to P4, but we'll worry about that at that stage. Okay, let's just make this a bit tidier. So what they're telling you is the points labeled P, P1, P2, and P3. That's where the point P goes to after the translation. So they're saying, right, P was here, and after the axial symmetry, it moves to P1. Then P1 moves to P2. So P1 after the axial symmetry after the central symmetry ends up at P2. And then the translation, P2 after the translation moves to P3. Okay, so far that's what we're getting, that's what we're working through, that's what we're doing. So straight away, before I ever draw a line, I know I am going to need the axis for the axial symmetry. I'm going to need the central point for the central symmetry, and for translation I don't need anything because it is the easier of the ones. Now, one thing I can do, and I'm actually going to do it in here right now to help move this along, is on the actual question sheet, and this is for you when it comes to revision as well. On the actual question sheet, you can start working out some of the question, like stop you revising them. So I know, for example, that P is going to move to P1, so I know it's going to go like that. But when it goes like that is to go through an axial symmetry. So an axis is always a 90-degree line from the center point of the axis. So without being too particular here, because I'm just trying to work out what's going on, 15, 16, 17, 18, 9 and 9, the halfway point would be about there. Okay, so I'm going to have to bisect there, and my axial symmetry line, and I'm really now trying to do this quite roughly because I'm conscious that we need to move on. So I'm going to have a line across there through my question that's going to allow me to move that object through the axis line out the other side the same amount, and that is the axis. Okay, the next one then is P1 to P2, which was a central symmetry, and with central symmetry I always said look for the center point, so you're going to end up doing the same thing, bisecting P1 to P2, whatever it might be. And again, wherever that point is, the bisection point, that is going to be our central symmetry point. Now take note, 2 of the 3, okay, 2 of the 3 transformations, 2 of the 3, I'll say it again, I have to bisect between the points. So I suppose what I'm trying to say, or trying to make obvious in a kind of roundabout way, is that every time you've one of these questions, if at the very least you join the 2 points together, the P to P1, the P1 to P2, P2 to P3, P3 to P4, and bisected them, you won't be right every time, but you'll be right most of the time, and you'll get some marks. All right, here is the actual question, ready to work on. So this is the one I had printed for you, and it was the one that I had wanted you to work through. So, or you could have drawn it. Now, before I start, I'm going to label the points, and it doesn't really matter what labeling you use. I'm going to go 1, 2 in there, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, point labeling is vital, remember that. You are always going to need it in order to move points around. Now, I'm just going to analyze this a minute because I didn't draw this and some of you will have printed as well. So I'm going to just check a few things. 1, oh look, line 4, 5 is at 45 degrees naturally. So is the line from 3. Everything else going in the other direction is also at 45, I believe. Yes, it is. Except for the line from 6 to 7 and 7 to 1. Now, that might make no odds to the question. I don't know yet. But it's no harm to take note of it. Okay. So we'll go back to where we started a minute ago, which is we're about to do an axial symmetry, and the axial symmetry is where you join 2 points, you bisect the 2 points, and the bisection line becomes the mirror. So there's the 2 points joined. So far so good. Out with the compass, just a reminder on how to bisect. Open the compass slightly more than halfway and scribe 2 arcs. Okay. And the 2 arcs joined together then, that is my axis. It is the mirror through which I am going to reflect every point. Now, when you're putting in the mirror, so to speak, It just needs to be wider than the original shape. Now, that angle is not going to be anything handy like 30 degrees and 45. There's our other difference between ordinary and higher level. Okay, it's going to be a peculiar angle, and by peculiar I mean one that isn't 45, 30 or 60. And in order to manage it, you are either going to have to use slide and set squares, or, as I'm going to try and do now, use an adjustable set square. Now the board I'm using is quite small for the adjustable set square I have, so I'm just going to try and get it as accurate as I can. So I'm just opening up the set square, locking it in position, and checking that my angle is accurate. It is. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to reflect each point through the mirror out the other side the same distance. And the minute I say the same distance, even in my own head, I'm saying to myself, right, I'm going to need a compass here now in a minute to mark some of these off. So how am I? I'm going to use green, guys, for construction lines for this. So the orange, remember, is the axes and the original set of points. If I start with, I suppose I better start with point 1. Start at the very beginning. So point 1 goes through the mirror, out the other side. Don't know how far yet, but I will take my compass and I will set it to. So in axial symmetry, you are resetting your compass kind of not over and over again, but certainly enough times as is needed, which is quite a lot. So there's the distance from the mirror to the original point. I turn the compass around and I mark it at the other side. So there's my new point 1, and I'll just leave that sit there for a second. Okay, so that's point 1. Point 2, I will go ahead, there's point 2. I will reflect it through, and every time I reflect, by the way, I'm looking at the length of it and I'm kind of saying, right, it's obviously going to be around that length. You should be, at this stage of your drawing career, you should be able to sort of eyeball that. It's a bit big now. So there is point 2. So that's 1 to 2. Now I can join that in. It is done, it is complete, it is finished. So I can join it in with a heavy line or a light line. I am actually going to draw it with a light line for the moment, just until I'm sure that everything else is okay. Because what I'm looking for constantly is a shortcut, and there usually is some kind of a shortcut in this question. I'm actually thinking the shortcut in this question would be to draw the square in the first place. But it's not going to make it terribly short or much shorter, to be honest. So I will just continue on with the progress I'm making. So that's number 1, number 2, number 3. Here we go. Okay, and again, the same distance. Now I will probably speed up the video around this section, because I'm just going to continue on doing the same thing. We'll see now in a while. So 1 to 2, 3. Now, if, actually I'm not going to speed up the video because I'm going to talk a little bit here. If P1 and 3 were all on the same line originally, one way of checking that I am correct is to join them up, and this is a way of keeping things accurate. So all I'm going to do for the moment is just put in a light yellow line for the square, and I'm also going to bring down the other end of the square. Mind you, I'm still thinking that this isn't necessarily going to be a shortcut, but it might be. The reason I'm saying it's not a shortcut is the points aren't really on the square. 5 is 1, 3, 5 and 7 really the only ones on the square. So really the only benefit in drawing the square is to get those, which will make a question a little bit faster. Okay. Right, so that is the square this fits into. I'm just going to use slide and set squares on this for a minute. Because I want to be sure that that is accurate, and it is. So to complete the square, and I'm only putting it in yellow, I have a suspicion even on the camera you mightn't be able to see it. I'll zoom in now in just a second. So there's it into my square. Another thing I suppose you will notice about these or any of the higher level questions is that they will never be quick. There will always be some awkward element in it. All right, I'm just going to zoom in on that bit for a minute because I can see it's quite hard to see. Okay. All right, so there's my square. Now, I need to continue on from where I was. Remember what I said, that square isn't essential. It's just helpful, or at least slightly helpful. So how does it help me though? Look, if I now bring down 0.7, there it is, the edge of the square. There's 0.7 there, and it just saves me having to measure that again. So 7, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to go down now with 4. So there's the line for 4. And measurement from 4 back to what we were doing. Axis to 4. Reflect to the other side. Mark it off. And you'll notice that that just sticks out beyond the square, which is what I am not just hoping for, but it's what I am expecting. And the other thing I want to go back to at the start of the question, I said to you that the majority of the lines, sorry, I'm just trying to line this up, but it's the shadow, which makes it hard. There it is. The majority of the lines are parallel. So 4 is parallel to 2, 3. Sorry, 4 to 5 is parallel to 2, 3. I already have 2, 3, so I could go in there again with slide and set squares and save myself a bother. Or I can just bring 0.5 over and do what I've been doing. Okay, either option is not only correct, but worth full marks, which is what we're trying to achieve here. Sorry, what am I going parallel to? I'm going parallel to 2, 3. And I will also be going parallel to 2, 3 then as well for no, I'll be going at 90 degrees to it for 0.34. Oh no, I have that. That's okay. So 2, 3. So this should give me 5. Now, because at this stage I'm happy with the things being correct, I'm going to pop that in heavy. So there's my 0.5. 5 goes to 6, which is on a line parallel to the edge. So there's the center line again. So 6 is on there somewhere. Okay, and okay, so 0.6. there's a bit of inaccuracy in mine. Beginning to see it there now. So 0.6 comes down. Maybe I should have been careful with the slide and set square and so on. Or what I should have really, I suppose, paid attention to is that it's 0.2 that I would go parallel to. That's okay, I'm going to fix it. Slightly inaccurate, but I'm going to fix it. Or at least I'm going to try and fix it. If you were bringing every point one by one, it's certainly possible or even likely now that you'd be more accurate than I am. But either way, this question is a very difficult one to keep accurate. Okay. What I did there was I just drew down from number 2, which means my 0.5 now has moved slightly, but my 0.6 at the very least is correct. And I'm just going to continue on as if it was correct. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend on that ever so slightly. Part of the reason it's inaccurate, or using the slide and set squares was inaccurate, was the questions, or the lines, sorry, were quite small. The smaller the line, the more difficult it is to be accurate. And that is always going to be the case. And we have that problem here. So I'm out by less than a millimetre, which is okay because there's a certain amount of tolerance applied to these. It's the how. Okay, that is important. Now I have a new set square and board here, and it seems to be leaving behind little marks, so please ignore them. All right, so that was 6. I have 7. It's time to draw in the shape. To 1. Seven to 6. Okay, harder to see the shape emerge this time. So just be careful. And this is why I shaded it in at the very start in the first place. I need you to do the same thing. By shading it in, and by the way, there's a point I left out, but I'm going to put it in now. It's on line 2, 3. By shading it in at the start, you will visually make it easier, or it will be visually easier to manage. I think you're beginning to see the major difference here between ordinals and ordinary level, or higher and ordinary level. And that is the length of time it takes to do this. We're still on the axial symmetry. If this was ordinary level, we would have been nearly done a whole question. So there's extra points. It's that bit harder to be accurate. And you're going to need slide and set squares, which is awkward enough the best of times, or an adjustable set square. So if you are in the way of buying set squares, or you have some Johnny Cash, it would be worth spending it on an adjustable set square. Okay. Okay, so that was the axial symmetry. This was the axis, and we reflected every point through it out the other side by the same amount. So axial symmetry, P to P1. Now, still staying with the kind of small question and awkward question and so on. Next thing that's going to happen is we are moving P1 to P2. Okay, which means, if I can zoom out a bit here, It means we are joining P1 to P2. We are bisecting yet again, and we're going to take it from there. So P1 to P2, which actually is a horizontal line, I think, is it? Is it, from what I remember? It is indeed. Now, none of this, mind you, helps us, but it does mean I can draw a nice straight horizontal line. So P1 goes to P2, I jump in there again and I bisect. So compass slightly more than halfway, scribe 2 arcs, 1 to either side. Sometimes I take the arcs the whole way through, sometimes I don't. It doesn't really matter. So there is my bisector, which means that is my central symmetry point. Why can't I find my pencil? Highlight it. Anything that they're going to give you marks for, highlight it. All right, so what happens here? Well, P goes through that central point, out the other side, the same distance. So here's my green again. So the purple indicates the central symmetry and the central symmetry point. P1 to P2 indicates the first central symmetry. That's the first one done for you. And now we need to do the same thing with the rest of the points. So let me just number this again, 3, 4, or at least add on the numbers I haven't written in just yet, 5 and 6. So again, starting with, doesn't particularly matter, I'm going to go with point 2. This one, if you thought the last one was hard to keep accurate, this is way more difficult to keep accurate. One tip I would give you is constantly start off by putting your pencil on the central symmetry point and slide the set square up against the pencil, and then twist the pencil from there, or twist the set square from there, sorry, in order to draw your central symmetry line. Okay, and just try and be as accurate as you can. Okay, so I measure from the central symmetry point, so there it is. I measure to 1. There it is. And I reflect that measurement onto P2. So there's my new point 1. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing now with 3. So again, pencil on the central symmetry point, set square up against it, line it up with 3, bring it through, and again, put the compass on the central symmetry point. Oh, put it out to 3, there it is. And reflect. Again, like the last time, those 3 should be in one continuous line. And they are. Am I going to put in a square this time? Do you know, I don't think I am. I might just kind of check it as I go. But to be honest, I'm going to keep working through it. So next point, number 4. Through the central symmetry line, compass to 4, turn and reflect. New point 4. Five then. Now, because mine was inaccurate a while ago, Oh, there's the dog making barking noises. Compass. Compass to 5. Reflect. My lead seems to be broken. That could explain the inaccuracy. My lead is broken. Great. This is why I like a pencil compass, guys. I only got that compass yesterday. Anyway. Compass to 5. What was I doing? Oh yeah, writing down number 5. So number 5, I'm going to check that actually because it doesn't look terribly accurate. So pencil compass, compass out, pop it there. Open to 5, turn it over and reflect. Yes, there's my 0.5. And what's that, 5, 6 should be in a straight line between 5 and 2. But I don't have 2 gone in there yet. So 2 is next, because it'd be easier to put in 2 and then put in 6 on it. So 2 through the central point again, out the other side. Set your compass. I'd say you're sick of hearing me saying the same thing over and over, but that's what it's about. So compass, open it to 2 and reflect. Here we go. And as I said a minute ago, 6 is on a line joining 2 to 5, so it would be easier for me. So it is a tiny shortcut, but a shortcut nonetheless. But it would be easier to just pop in that central line and to bring 6 over. So again, point on center symmetry. Just stops me having to set the compass again. Okay, and 0.6 is there. Is that everything? Everything except 7. So I'm going to heavy in as much as I have, which here is 5 to 6, 4 to 5, 4 to 3, 3 to 4, 2 to 3, 2 to 1, and 1 to 7 and 7 to 6. So I need to put in 7. So point again, center point line, open to 7, reflect through, out the other side, set the compass again. Turn it over, being careful that you hit the right line. It can be tricky sometimes to get the right line. Sometimes they're so close together it's hard to know. So just be careful of that. So there's my 7, 7 to 6, and 7 to 1. Right. I'm just going to bring over his collar line there. There it is. And I'm going parallel to this edge. sliding set square. So that was central symmetry, and whether you're doing higher level or ordinary level or what it is you're doing, it's the very same setup. Find the center point, the central part between the 2 points, the 2 dots, the 2 P's. How would you find it? By bisecting, because that gives you the exact center. And then just work every point through it. And literally the only difference between higher and ordinary is that the ordinary level is a much simpler drawing, in the sense that there'll be less points and it'll just be quicker to do, and the angles won't be half as awkward. Okay, whereas higher level, more points, a little bit more awkward. Usually there is a circle involved, which, to be honest, doesn't necessarily make it much more difficult, but I decided to pick this one today just with the points to get us working through this first, and to see how it goes. So there is our central symmetry center point. So our center is in there. Now, we're not quite finished yet, but we're getting there. Next one is P2, then goes to P3 as an translation. Translation is the nice one. Translation is the easy one. Translation is usually the first one that comes up. Not here, and not at higher level. So what we're being asked to do, actually my adjustable set square, despite spending a fortune on it in the last week because I left my other ones at school, this is a new one, it's not going to line up, I don't think. Hold on a minute. Okay, well, I'm lining up anyway between 2 and 3. Is it? No, it's gone off the edge of the board. See, I'm using a small A3 board with my adjustable set squares. So, okay, I'm going to do sliding set squares like you, and that'll be okay too, even if it is a pain. Right, so one set square lines up with P2 and P3. I'm going to do this one in pink, I think. I haven't done pink yet. Do I even have pink? Apparently not. Thought I did light pink. Okay. I'm going to do this one so in blue. Oh no, not pink. Okay. So P2 goes to P3. And what I've done there now is I have set up my translation, because it's this direction that every point now has to move, and it's for this distance. And when I say this distance, I mean I will set my compass for P2 to P3. Okay. And I'm going to leave my compass set at that, and I'm going to move every point through the same amount. So sliding set squares means that I need to put one set square against the line. So one set square against that pink line there. And then I slide the other set square up through each point. So if I start off with point 1, there I go. Point 3. Oops, started moving on me. It might be easier to draw all these, by the way, in one go, though I wouldn't really recommend it, but if you're using sliding set squares, do. And say to yourself, every time you draw a line, you will be measuring the same measurement on it. So this one is pretty quick. Okay, so there's all my lines, quite a lot of them. So I already have, as I indicated a while ago, this set. P2 is set to P3. So now for point 1, I'm just going to come along. There's my new point 1. Point 2, put the compass on 2. There's my new point 2 on the same line. Point 7 on the point 7 originally onto the new line. Point 6 on the point 6 originally over to the new line. Point 5. There we go. Point 4. Be careful here, it's the top one. And the collar, I won't put that in just yet. So let me start joining them together. So that is 1 to 2. That's here to here. 2 to 3. Didn't do 3. So back in with my compass, but my compass is set at the normal setting anyway. It's only a matter of doing that. So 1 to 2, 2 to 3. Now remember, the shape won't twist or do anything. It's literally like cutting it out of the paper and sliding it. 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Did you ever come home, lads, in the day with your school bag and come in the front door of the house and throw your school bag down the floor and sort of slide it in under the stairs or whatever it is you do, you know, kind of fling it and slide it along the floor? If you did that, you were doing a translation. It was a bit weird, mind you, but you were doing a translation because you were moving it without turning it or changing it. So if we just slid along. Anyway, so there's the doggy appearing from the dots, like a good old joined dot you had in primary school. Last thing I need to do is put in collar. Did I draw in the line for it? I did. So where will the collar end up? Here. And I'm just going to go parallel to that. Number it all again. 1, 2, 3. And okay, so there's the part of the question that I asked you to do complete. We still need to move on to rotation, and I plan to do that now over the next week. It's a little bit tricky, there's a little bit involved in it, but in general it's an okay question overall. Now remember what we said at the start of the year, that I'm going to try and do questions that will ensure you have enough done for your exam no matter what happens. And here we are again off. So regardless, this is one of the ones that we're going to do, one of the ones that's going to be important for your exam because it gives you an option and it's a good question to build up marks in. Okay, a long question, yeah, in terms of how long it takes, but a good question to bring up marks in. So I hope that was all okay. And talk to you the next day. All right, guys, bye-bye.